గుడ్ మార్నింగ్. రేడియో సురభి శ్రోతలందరికీ హార్దిక స్వాగతం. మనము వింటున్నాము పవరింగ్ పాసిబిలిటీస్ పవర్డ్ బై జోహో. ఇవాల్టి కార్యక్రమానికి మీ హోస్ట్ నేను మీ ఆర్జే వేణు చెరుకుపల్లి. అండ్ వీ హ్యావ్ ది ఎక్స్ట్రీమ్ privilege of inviting Geeta Menon to our Powering Possibilities today. Hello, Geeta. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Venu. It's great to meet all the audience of Radio Surabhi.
Likewise. Thank you so very much. So, a little bit about you. I have your intro. So, Geeta Menon is an experienced senior executive and educator who is serving as a faculty for sustainability at the Naveen Zindal School of Management, UT Dallas. And she is also the founder of One Earth, One Chance. Very interesting name. We'll get into that here shortly. A nonprofit that has expanded urban forests with more than 7,000 native trees and plants and driven environmental stewardship through 145 and more community events. Geeta, again, warm welcome to Radio Surabhi, Powering Possibilities, powered by Zoho. Okay, so Geeta, where do you currently reside?
So I live in a lovely city called Parker. It's right alongside Plano and Allen, in that area. So east of 75, but it's a beautiful wooded area.
I wonder why you chose that area.
I wonder. No prizes for guessing.
Right. Okay. Well, before we get into the nonprofit organization that you founded, Geeta, I know you have many part-time gigs. Again, like I said, we'll get into that shortly. But what are you working on in a full-time capacity?
So I took early retirement a year ago from corporate after several like decades of a corporate career at companies like SAP and Accenture and Dell. So I decided, my time of learning and earning had been completed, and I wanted to move to returning. So I took up a part-time role at UTD, teaching, as you mentioned, teaching sustainability and AI and the cross section of that. And I also run a nonprofit, as you also mentioned. So that's been my focus lately. So no corporate, no corporate career anymore. But I
Oh,
do work.
congrats. Yeah,
But
go ahead.
one of the things that's great about the UTD role is I can bring academics and industry together. So there's an opportunity to do that on the topic of sustainability.
That is fantastic. And congratulations on early retirement. I know very few people have that luxury, but um, so you've been in leadership roles at major companies, like you said, SAP, Dell, and the list goes on. What drew you towards the environmental stewardship? I mean, it's like, you cannot even remotely connect them both, and I'm trying to see where they intersect.
So I have to go back to my upbringing. I have to go
Okay.
back to where I came from. I actually grew up in a lovely little area next to the river Hooghly in Kolkata. And my father worked there, and I grew up. I used to cross the river to across the river Hooghly to go to school. So I grew up surrounded by nature, and I have developed a deep sense of respect for nature. And even the state that my parents are from, Kerala, has a strong green background,
Oh, tell me about it.
and again, strong respect for what nature brings to the table. And in addition to that, my mother actually runs, she's 84, and she runs a school for the differently able. So I had seen service. I had seen close up what it meant to live a life of service and the meaning she finds from it. So the two came together, and I looked around. I actually was looking for other organizations I could join to
Hmm.
do this work, and I really couldn't find, or I guess I couldn't find that would accept me, as a volunteer even. There wasn't any meaningful role. So I said, let's start one. I got a group of friends together, and most of them are on the board as well. But we got together and we said, what can we do today, here and now? We were all working still. And we said, let's do the greening, let's plant trees and native plants. Let's do cleaning. So every month we do a cleanup in a city park. We pick up, trash from creek beds, which is where everything goes to. That's where
That
everything gets
settles there,
parked.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, the third thing, which I'm really proud of, is our Green Ambassador Workshop series. So every month, we also host an education series on topics like energy and, the green economy, food and agriculture, wellness, all these topics that are, you know, is involved, that we're all involved with in our day-to-day lives. But how does it connect to sustainability? How can we make choices that are sustainable, that can preserve our resources for future generations? So some of this is also about intergenerational equity. We don't want to just consume everything, use everything up, and then leave a much worse world for our children.
Very well said. How do you define sustainability, Gita? What does sustainability mean to you?
So that's what I mentioned at the very end of my earlier response, which is, we want to have a light touch on this world. Think of this as a spaceship. We're all on this
Mm,
spaceship, rotating around the sun, and this spaceship is our only home. This is the home that we have, and how do we live, enjoy life, do all the things we want to do, but do it in such a way that whatever we do, all our consumption is conscious, and we can preserve some of it for our children and for future generations, and also for the wildlife, that can't speak to us. They're the plants and the trees and the wildlife, because our lives are interconnected with them. Then we're not
mm,
different from them. Today, like we I think 70% of all life on earth is human, because we've slowly reduced the population because of agriculture and food. We are,
unfortunately.
yeah, but there has to be a way to do this, in a way that it's a light touch, and we are preserving some of this for future generations. So that's really what how I define sustainability is, sustaining it, like being
Right.
resilient. You want to sustain these things for the future.
That reminds me, Geeta, of there's a Telugu movie that came about, I think in the last decade or so. And there's the hero in that movie is all about, sustainability. And there's a song where it says, we came here as guests. We don't own this place, right? And you have to leave it like you found it, just the way you found it, right?
At least.
And at the minimum, if not make it better, right? The least you could do is to keep it the way you found it, and probably make it a better place for the future
Yes.
generations. But that, for some people, that may be asking for too much, but at the minimum, keep it, preserve it the way you found it. Because again, it's very powerful, right? We tend to think that, oh, we are powerful, we have all this technology and all that, but in front of nature, I mean, nature humbles you very once in a
It
while, no
does.
matter how progress you've made. Do you agree with
The,
that?
the world will probably keep on. It's us that's going to be affected if there is a climate crisis, because, as things get, the weather gets hotter, there's more storms, more tornadoes. All of what we have could go in an instant. I mean, we
Yeah.
could be hurtling towards the sixth extinction, of species. But, so I don't think it's the earth may survive. Will we survive? Is the question. Um,
And that actually also reminds me, right? Earth, we've been here for, few thousand years, maybe, right? Give or take. But Earth has been around for a while. I mean, it went through a lot more worse disasters, right? The meteorites hitting and all, volcanoes, but it has the ability to self-heal,
It does. And
right?
you actually raised such an important point, because that's what I call resilience, because the earth has the ability, we have to just let it heal, you know.
Exactly. But this is not you. We think that we are saving the earth, right? But in reality, actually, we're trying to save ourselves, our future generations.
Venu, you took the words out of my mouth. That is exactly right. We think the environment is separate from social and, our humanity, but it's not. We depend on it in more ways than we realize.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the consequences are very visible everywhere. We'll talk about that, Geeta. And in your bio also, one word that really caught my attention is urban forests. I mean,
Hmm.
kind of counterintuitive, right? I mean, where do you find forests in the urban area? Talk to me about that.
You have to go to Central Park in New York to see that in
Okay,
action,
all right.
So, the fact is, urban areas have been altered, in a big way. I mean, we're surrounded by concrete and glass. They are heat islands. So cities are actually 4 to 9 degrees hotter than
Hmm.
the surrounding areas. I think if you go to the countryside, you'll see that. So for me, we live and work in urban areas and suburban
Hmm.
areas. And my goal was, how do we mitigate? Because we have to adapt and mitigate, you know, uh, 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 there's just too much heat and bad weather happening in Dallas where we don't take action. And urban forests are bringing forests to us. We can go do forestation in some remote area, but this is where the need is. This is where the heat islands are. And unfortunately, the heat islands affect those that are not wealthy necessarily. So if you go to the less privileged neighborhoods, there's less trees.
Hmm.
It's just like a correlation. So you go
Hmm.
you go to wealthier neighborhoods, you'll see they're wooded and people do have trees. So why is that the case? Why is there this inequity? And urban areas are suffering because of that, and we have to bring the forest to it, even if, to allow small animals and birds to survive, to bring down pollution, to filter the air, because there's traffic and transportation. All these fossil fuels are generating, particles into the air. So there's a need, hence urban forests.
Urgent need, if I may add.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you hear these stories, Geeta, where like Japan, I think, and there are some other places, Delhi, for example. I
Delhi.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, come winter, I mean, they're scrambling to find some fresh air. And
Exactly.
very soon, I think it's happening already. People are buying oxygen for crying out loud, right?
Indeed.
And
Yeah.
it is such a pathetic situation, and not all of it has happened on its own. We caused it, so it's our responsibility to correct that behavior. Okay,
Exactly. And
so
we can
I.
say, say the government should do it, and, you can wait for all that, but we're just taking action. We're just, going and planting the trees. That's why we were able to accomplish 7,000, is because cities said, come do it, join with us. They actually partner with us. They match our funds. In most cases, and we do the plantings. Unless they're an underprivileged school or neighborhood,
Mm, mm.
we do a match.
Thank you, Geeta. Again, మనం మాట్లాడుతున్నాము గీతా మేనన్ గారితో in the segment called Powering Possibilities, powered by Zoho. Well, Geeta, some people may argue, and rightfully so, when they say, okay, well, we have to cut trees. Like, for example, they're building a new road leading up to my son's school, and they had to cut through a lot of trees to make this road. That is needed, though, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
in your opinion, how do we compensate for that? How do we compensate for that?
So I think that's where smart cities and urban planning comes in, and obviously that's not something our organization, we do advocacy, for plastic pollution and things like that, but
Mhm.
there's Citizens Climate Lobby that works with urban planners and so on to make sure that, yes, so things have to be done, certain land has to be used a certain way, whether it's for agriculture or for roads or for, urban areas for housing. But how do you do it in a responsible way by keeping some green spaces,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
making sure that, there's migration of birds and animals, making sure that we're not, the lighting, gets turned off so that birds don't hit glass and hit concrete, so that it's about smart planning, right? It's urban planning where you don't just look at how do you maximize profit, but how do you also maximize the planet? So it's like the triple P, as they call it, right? So,
Mm,
people, make sure people, planet, and profit are all, considered when you do your planning. I know it's probably more profitable to think of only one thing, but that's where, the mindful and conscious planning comes in. That's something that we can all, through our election process, make sure that those needs are heard, and that we're lobbying for those things, because it's important. In fact, Texas actually, we think of Texas as, sometimes not as sensitive to those causes, but they actually passed a really good proposition for water conservation, because the next crisis, the first crisis coming upon us, is going to be water.
mm.
And Texas is very dry, and there's a lot of drought. And the big aquifers that are feeding Texas, it's called the Ogala aquifers, they're drying up. We're consuming more than aquifers too are resilient and they rebuild. But if you consume at a pace that's not sustainable, then there's a problem. So they actually passed a proposition, and you'll be surprised that leaky pipes are the biggest reason for water wastage,
Really?
like old pipes. Yeah.
Mm,
So this proposition is looking to improve some of that. This back to urban planning, and fixing leaky pipes, not over consuming, like fracking for natural gas uses a lot of water. So I mean, everything is tied together, and we have to educate ourselves on what's happening. I think a lot of people voted yes for Proposition 4, for the water proposition, so that passed, and now we are going to get some attention placed on water. So I think we can all, through our elections process and also through our wallet, right? The products we buy, we can vote through both, in both ways, right?
fantastic, fantastic. Let me put you in a spot, okay? If you think, the
Okay.
interview is going well and all that. So here's the thing. You are an advocate of AI,
Yes.
okay? And to enable AI, we have to, a lot of companies are scrambling to build the data centers, correct?
Yes.
And so much so that a lot of tech companies that are investing in AI are calling themselves construction companies now, rather
Yeah.
than the tech companies,
Interesting.
because of
Yeah.
this mad rush to build that portfolio of the data centers. And if you think of a data center, there's a lot of construction that has to happen. So a lot of land is consumed. Needs a lot of power to power those computers, water for cooling. So again, the
Yes.
development versus sustainability. How do we
That's a
draw that
really,
line?
really good question. I'm actually going to spend a whole semester, 16 sessions talking about this
Oh,
at
nice.
UTD this
I read
spring.
your mind then.
I'm doing a plug for my course at UTD, Jindal School of Management. But so there are pros and cons, right? So the first thing is we have to make data centers green,
Mm,
and it's not impossible to do that. There are already, Google, there are some companies that are looking to build data centers that are green by using renewable energy,
mhm.
by reusing water for cooling, because you can use, yes, you do have to use fresh water, but there's a way to recycle it,
Right.
and reuse it. And use better mechanisms for cooling, all of that. So there are ways to make the data centers green. So that is one aspect, right? That mitigates the problem. The second thing is, um, you'll be surprised that email and WhatsApp consume more energy and use up more data center, computing power than AI today. Now that's changing. Obviously, AI is tracking up, but today we don't think of it. But all that email storage, all that the emails and the good mornings on WhatsApp, is it really needed? So, I mean, we think of AI as the big problem. Let's stop the, all this, traffic, right, on platform on the internet. So that's one thing. But that was more in jest. I was mentioning because people don't realize the impact of those things, but green AI is one answer. The other answer is to solve problems that are environmental. There are no better tools than satellite imagery, AI, Internet of Things. These are techniques that we can use to solve these. The problems are so big. I mean, there are so many parts of the ocean, there are so many parts of Earth that we have no idea what's happening. Like the
Hmm.
Amazon for deforestation is
Right.
being like driven through satellite imagery and AI.
Wow.
So there is no better solution for us to solve these massive problems that we don't even fully understand but AI, right? Our human brain and our eyes and we cannot keep up with these problems, right? So we need AI. But can AI be green? Of course, it needs to be green, and we must make it green, right? And even the land use, like so even solar energy farms like take up land, right? We're thinking AI, but even to have renewable energy, you need the land to set up panels, to set up. So there are always trade-offs, right? But whatever we do, we cannot do it at the cost of the environment. That we have
Mm,
to make sure that we consider that and make sure that it's a percentage of the land that we're not taking away from to destroy the biodiversity there, right? We have to do it
very
in a
nice.
balanced fashion. So there's no one silver bullet, right? These things are trade-offs, and we have to make choices that are good for, as I mentioned, for all three parties.
Amazing, amazing, and good luck with those with those courses. And
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, AI has penetrated everywhere.
yeah.
So we have to live with it for foreseeable future. Now let's get back to your organization. And you asked for me earlier if I could share some of the questions, but looks like you've already did a good job guessing it. There are so many organizations, with the same cause that serve the same
Yeah,
cause, Geeta.
yeah.
What made you, and you mentioned, there was no role that you could
For me,
see
yes.
fit.
Mhm.
Um, so how is your organization different from the others that are working on the same cause?
So first and foremost, I think the problem is so big, Venu, that anybody and everybody that is involved in it, I welcome them. I don't see any of those organizations as like, this is not a competition, right?
Mhm.
For me, every one of them is a
It takes
partner.
everybody.
There's everybody. It's going to take a whole, all of us to pitch in, whether it's as volunteers or other organizations. So, I've worked with like at least five different other environmental nonprofits to do, tree planting, shrub planting, and sometimes we go alone and we do it with the city. But
Hmm.
it's always with the city's urban forestry department. So we never lack for partners. Sometimes like there's three partners, we might bring the funds, somebody else might bring the arborist knowledge, somebody else might bring the space, the city might provide the space. So this is this is something that requires everybody to participate. And rarely, I have not, it must be an aspect of this space, but I have not met one unhelpful organization, in my experience here. They've all wanted to help, right, in different ways. Even with our teaching, they come out and help us teach our workshops. So um, I think we all bring something to the table. That's why we work together. And for us, like as I mentioned, we have that industry experience. We bring a strong project management focus to the table, and we bring the funds from individuals, and we when they provide funds, they also providing their contacts and their network and their roster, right? So to me, it's very symbiotic.
Amazing. Now let's get into the name piece. One
Yeah.
Earth. Yes, we all know there's only one Earth. One chance? What do you mean by that?
Well, us as a race, we have one chance. The Earth may have many chances, but
Like
for
we talked
us,
about earlier,
we
right?
talked about
Yeah.
that earlier. So the Earth has had many chances, and but I mean, I don't know. There could be some things we do that could be. irredeemable. We don't know that, but we our touch has been so heavy. Us as a race, we have to look at, we're already going to cross that 1.5 degree Celsius. The Paris Agreement talks about the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. We're going to cross that, and what it's going to do is it's going to make some parts of the world uninhabitable. It's going to create climate refugees. It's going to create more war and conflict. It's going to create more disease, chronic diseases, and diseases pertaining to where they live. But we have one chance to kind of reverse that, and humans have reversed things. you know and there was a time everybody was smoking a cigarette, and
Mm.
we don't anymore because we know it's bad for us. So my hope is we'll see this as something like that, which is bad for us, bad for our home, and bad for our co-inhabitants, right? The wildlife and the trees and plants. So I'm hoping we can check ourselves and bring. So that's the chance I'm talking about. We have one chance to get this right.
Right,
Otherwise,
right.
we will not have another chance. The Earth might.
Well said, well said. So again, like we talked about, it takes multiple organizations, sometimes, or more often than not, partnership between them because they all bring in different kind of expertise. But I, I imagine that there's always going to be shortage of people working in this, right? So
Yeah.
what's your pitch, elevator pitch, if you will, for to attract more people to join you in this effort, Geeta?
So for me, the elevator pitch changes a little bit based on what generation the
Of
audience
course.
is from. So when I talk to older people, I always talk about intergenerational equity. I say,
Hmm.
what kind of a world do you want to leave behind for your children you love and the grandchildren you love? What do you want to leave behind? And and usually that's sufficient to get them to do something. They might have experienced some personal things related to the environment, whether it might be disease or maybe, whatever it might be.
Sure.
um, so everybody has their own motivation, but I think as especially older people sometimes don't care, right? Like they don't care because they feel like their time they've done, they're going to be gone when all this happens, right? So I have to appeal to their sense of rightness,
Mm.
make sure that you leave a good legacy behind. If it's a Desi audience of that generation, I also appeal to them saying, come go back to where you came from. When we were in India, we reused everything, right? We didn't consume so much. We were always about just use enough, what you need. This whole concept of excess, was never there, right? Our
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so we grew up with that. So I'm like, can we go back to that time where we're doing, what, thinking more, acting more consciously? So, and then for kids, I really tell them, look, this is your future. This is what you have to do this. This is something that you should do
One chance.
one chance, right? And if you don't, that might not be, and don't wait for us to fix it. This is your at front and center. We want you to be the change makers. So that's, I mean, the appeal is different, but at the end of the day,
Got it.
everybody is motivated by different things. But I try to, even if they're motivated to do service for people, I always say the planet is not separate from this impacts us, it impacts people. So I try to bring it back to that. And then some
Right.
people, they want to think costs, and I say, look, insurance is going up because of all the disasters. Your premiums are going to go up. So I try to appeal to them you can save money by being more environmental. So based on the audience, I use a different pitch.
Very well said. It's
Sometimes it
hard to
works and
connect all
sometimes
those
it
things, but again, they're all interconnected, right? Awesome, awesome. So, how did you land the opportunity at the school?
at UTD.
Mhm.
Well, I actually reached out to the dean and to, other folks, the vice dean and, other folks at the School of Management. And I started by just giving services, free, right? Like I would just go help different student organizations with
Hmm.
entrepreneurship competitions and with other activities. There were panels. We were hosting speaker series and panels. So I kind of started by just offering help to the students and to the professors. And then, as we got familiar, I was like, okay, well, this idea came up of everybody's thinking about AI. Where does it, AI is needed for sustainability, yet it can be unsustainable. So that whole topic came up, and um,
Fantastic,
I'm
fantastic.
excited to do that. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk something fun. So, where would you rather be, a beach or a mountain? Geeta.
I am very much a mountain person. The beach is lovely. I do love that, but the mountains for me, because in Kerala, the place where I grew up. I mean, sorry, not where I grew up. I grew up in Kolkata, but I'd go for summers to my mother's home in near Palakkad, which is in the near the Western Ghats, right? And so I was surrounded by mountains all summer, and so there were rolling paddy fields, and then the mountains behind it. So
Oh man.
I that it's indescribable, the beauty there. So I would love to go for.
My one of the things on my bucket list is to take a train ride from Kerala to Goa during the monsoon time.
Ooh, that's a great
Oh,
idea. During the
amazing.
monsoon.
During the monsoon.
Okay, so no dust even.
No dust, and there are these waterfalls.
Yeah.
I'm drawing a blank on the name. Dudhsagar waterfalls. Or
You
that
cross
place.
that on the,
I
okay.
wish, I wish, not yet. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully sometime soon. But yeah,
But does
the
that train ride take you through those
oh
waterfalls?
yeah, there's a bridge, and then there's this
Wow.
waterfall, and there's water all over the train. That's on my bucket list.
Let's manifest it.
I hope, right? Awesome, awesome. Well, Geeta, thank you so much for your time. And again, I hope that our audience are just as inspired as I am, and brought me back so many memories. When I was a kid, I used to like, take a small ball, put some seed in there, and watching it grow. I used to carry that and then plant it somewhere and water that, and
Oh, how
and
lovely. Yeah.
just to see that grow, it's
Yeah.
it's so satisfying,
Yes.
right? To see it, to bring it to life, if you will. That's
Exactly.
amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Radio Surabhi శ్రోతలందరికీ ధన్యవాదాలు. మీరు విన్నారు the conversation with Geeta Menon on this segment of Powering Possibilities, powered by Zoho. Geeta, thank you so much for doing this for all of us, and I really, really do mean it. All the very, very best, and I appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you, Venu. Thank
Have
you,
a great day.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.